You Booked It, episode 20. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. Alrighty, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Trent Mills. Are you ready for this, Trent?
Oh, you better believe it.
Yeah. Trent is an actor, singer, and musical theater coach. Most recently, he played Marcellus in Music Man, starring Adam Pascal, and voiced the character of Lero Rowe for the upcoming anime series Tower of God. Other favorite credits include Shrek in Shrek the Musical, Casey in Swing the Musical, Ash in The Evil Dead the Musical National Tour, and lots of wonderful concerts at Rockwell, 54 Below, Joe's Pub, Triad, and more. He's performed improv in various New York City hotspots and has also worked in many roles in film and TV production. He graduated from the Boston Conservatory in 2011 with a BFA in musical theater. Trent, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Fill in the gaps, who you are, where you're from, where you're currently calling home, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
Absolutely, Dane. So I'm an actor, I'm a singer, I'm a voiceover artist. Currently, I'm in LA, though did spend some time in New York as well. And honestly, I'm not really from anywhere. I moved a couple of dozen times growing up, and I spent a lot of my childhood,
Wow.
sort of in the West, in Utah and Nevada. I lived in Vegas for a while, actually, as a kid, California, and then one time in Florida, but I don't talk about that. And then, of course, recently, in addition to being an actor and a singer, uh, actually before the pandemic hit, I started becoming a musical theater coach as well. My wonderful girlfriend has been a voice teacher and a piano teacher for many years, and started kicking over these students to start giving them acting coaching. And I just started doing that. Pandemic hit, and now that has been the majority of my time is working doing that, running intensives, and then I do these master classes where I invite, a lot of these friends of mine who were working on Broadway and they lost their jobs, and so now I have a plethora of good friends to run master classes around as well for my
Absolutely.
students. Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what I'm up to at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on to this next section. And look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What's your favorite quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
Ooh, I love this quote. I'm a sucker too for a good quote. I'm a big like Ram Dass, Tony Robbins guy, and they always have those zingers. But this one is my favorite. It's if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. And that
Can
is
you expand on that?
absolutely. So what that means is to just do it. I know for me in my life, I've spent a lot of time being fearful of not doing something correctly. And it causes me not to act at all. So, writing a script or doing comedy or doing a stand up set or something like that. And basically, that quote is if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly, meaning just do it because you're never going to think your way into being good. You have to just start acting, acting, acting. And it's a very It's an amazing quote. It's one of my favorite things, and I don't know who said it, but a mentor of mine told me that when I first started working with him some years ago.
I love that. It's kind of like the analysis paralysis problem that I believe Robert Kiyosaki talks about that a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just can't overthink things. Just throw it out there, see what happens, see what sticks.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that goes for anything in my life. I mean, that's applied to so many things. It's so, whether that's exercise or, I need to call someone, I started meditating some years ago and I was like, well, I don't know how to do it. And then I just started doing it, writing. And
Yeah,
then that can be anything. And I think that kind of the point of that quote is that, and this is another quote. This is actually a quote from another book, but I'll talk about that later. It's you can't think your way into better acting, but you can act your way into better thinking. And I think that is kind of the point of that
yeah,
whole
absolutely.
idea.
Love it. Well, let's move to this next section. And Trent, of course, you're an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think you'd agree. This industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries either of us know about. And you know as well as I that to create and to have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, for sure, there is an outrageous amount of fun and excitement being an entertainer, there are also our fair share of obstacles and challenges and failures we are going to experience. And we're going to have to move forward through them if we want to continue doing this professionally. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career? And how did you come out the other side better because of it?
So I can say, I have a million of these.
Don't we all? Don't we
Honestly,
all?
right? I mean, obstacles can be anything, and you're a bigger guy too. We're very different in that sense, but I'm a massive man. I'm 6'4". I'm just a huge person. That can be an obstacle, but I think everything for me, especially the really rough part of my life, for me actually was addiction, and which had a lot to do with the negative thought patterns I was going through. The biggest struggle and a lot of my failures actually were rooted in that before I decided to get help. So I struggled with that my whole life. It was like started with TV and food as a kid. You know, I'd watch
Yeah,
TV instead of doing my homework. I just needed to fill some void. I found drugs early on, but I didn't develop a problem until I was, in the last 2 years of my college years, which again, it's hard to realize that in the environment, in the society we live in, where it's sort of championed to
right?
to to drink a lot the night before and then wake up and do stuff. It's sort of like you're a trooper. At a certain point, it became the all-consuming priority in my life. And that was at a really crucial moment in my life, actually. It was when I had gotten out of college, I'd done Showcase, I'd gotten an agent, and I started being called in for really big things. And like, for instance, just an example, like I got through these callbacks and for Book of Mormon on Broadway for Elder Price at that point, and it went really well. But there was the one last callback where I was having such bad shakes because I had drank so much the night before, and I believe I was snorting Adderall or something at the time, and came in and couldn't get my hands to stop shaking. And then I was never called back into that office again. So there's a lot of moments like that in that period. uh, you know, Lost relationships, career, health. And then I would say at a certain point, about, in my mid 20s, I got really lucky and I hit a rock bottom. I lost
Yeah.
everything, relationships, jobs. Nobody was calling me anymore. You know what I mean? I just done this cruise line contract on Disney Cruise Lines. And it did not go well for me. I got through it. I got my money and I got off, but things really ramped up when I got back to New York. And I hit a bottom where I just realized that I had no control over my life. And
Wow.
and that has a lot, and I'll go on in deeper into that later, but I realized that I could not help myself. For the first time in my life, I realized I cannot get myself out of this. So for me, I began like a 12-step program, and I very quickly discovered that the alcohol, the drugging, all that stuff was just a symptom of a much deeper, this sort of deep seated innate cycle in my life. includes holding on to grudges and comparing myself to other people, thinking you're a victim, and more so than anything, like I said before, thinking that I had control over all these aspects in my life, which to me I've realized is false. So
Yeah.
you're trying, if you put it in theater terms, you're trying to play the director and the actor and the producer and the lighting designer and the stage manager in your own life, and it does not work out.
Yeah. Too much.
Yeah, seriously. So that basically, once I was able to understand that, gain some tools to deal with the addiction issues, that's what sort of led me to deep dive into just personal work and thinking about other people, which is important, and working every day. Essentially, I have to work every day to quell those nasty negative thoughts. Gratitude lists or meditation. I do a sort of form of prayer. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. And that's been the biggest game changer in life, creatively, career. I mean, everything. And it still comes up, food, being on my phone too much, self-centered thinking, wanting immediate results, just impatience in general. But that sort of was the catalyst to me to work on bettering myself first, I think.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, no, I have no problem with it. Talking
Yeah.
about it. It really is. It's the truth is that you don't need to have a life-threatening addiction or something to work through something like that or to find these tools. I count myself lucky that I had to be desperate enough to be willing to learn, really, to be willing to learn from others and ask for help. I think that's the biggest key to life is being like, I need help, and then learning and then moving on.
Absolutely. And I think that applies to quite literally all aspects of life, whether that is something internally, an addiction, some kind of inner turmoil, or if it's simply, I don't really know how to do this and it's very almost superficial,
Hmm.
but to ask for the help. And
Yeah,
that's how we grow.
absolutely. And it's a miserable day when you think you've figured it all out. That is typically the dumbest person in the room is the one that thinks they know the most. I don't remember whose quote that
So
is, but
true.
it's a good one.
So true. All right. Well, let's move on to this next section, to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. I can tell you precisely the moment. 6 years old. It was my birthday party. I was unwrapping presents and I made a pretty amazing joke where I said, fastest unwrapper in the West. I remember this very specifically. And my aunt laughed and she said I was so funny. This is silly, but I remember the feeling inside of me. It like fed me. I was like, yes, I can make people laugh. And then I immediately cracked another joke, and I don't remember what that one was, but I remember it crashed and burned. There was like crickets. So it was like in that moment, I learned both I love to entertain, and then I immediately learned what it was like to bomb.
Yeah,
And that was the moment that clearly sticks out in my mind. That is my memory. It's not a story anybody tells me. That's the first time I was like, I am born to make it. Started with comedy for me. It always has, but it's developed into other sort of art forms. But that was it. That was the first moment. It was
I
fun.
love that. You just got it all out of the way right up front.
Truthfully, and honestly, that need hasn't changed. That need and want has not changed. Now, the avenues in which I take that has changed drastically this year, and even within the past few years. And the art forms may have changed a little bit from theater to film to voiceover to singing to whatever writing, but it's the same inherent need. It's been there since I was 6.
For sure. Well, let's piggyback on that question and let's talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the audition and callbacks, if those happen to be a part of it. What was going on in your life? And what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Okay, yeah, I think okay, so this isn't the biggest job, quote unquote, I've ever booked by any means, but this was an incredible moment in my life. So, I was in New York for like 6 years, and I did a Disney cruise contract at the beginning. Vowed never to do a cruise again because it didn't it didn't do well for me. But then, as you and I know, I got desperate, wasn't booking the work in New York I needed, and another cruise contract came up for like it was Norwegian Cruise Lines for this job. They were doing a show called Swing, and it was like the Broadway cast or whatever. And I was like, well, that's good. Or not the Broadway director. And I was like, great. Okay. Well, I kind of talked myself into it. I really need the money. I could work with this person. When the truth is, I just needed to get out of New York. I was on the cruise, and I got to be honest, had a really tough time. I actually ended up getting very, very ill, and I had to be medically disembarked in Seattle for a month. And when I got back, I had discovered they had like there's some contractual things that were shady. I'll just say that. And I had been dating someone that had left the ship at the time, and I was already thinking, I was like, I don't know if I should be here. This doesn't feel right. And out of the blue, man, I got an email from the creators of Evil Dead the musical that were trying to launch this new national tour of the show. And they said, hey, this is weird. We got your name from actually a couple different sources. We've been trying to cast the lead actor in that, whose name is Ash, for months now, and we can't seem to find the right pick. It's a really specific role. You have to be able to do really specific things, right? And you also have to look a certain way. His Bruce
Of
Campbell
course.
played him originally, and you got to have a chin, blah blah blah. And they were like, "This is weird, but before we launch this very expensive nationwide search, we figured we'd shoot you an email and see what you were up to." And I said, "Funny, I'm actually on this cruise ship, but honestly, I might be
I don't
willing to
really want to
leave."
be.
Yeah. So they had sent me material, and I went to the whole of the ship. Literally, there's engines. You know how it is down there, down at
Yeah.
the I-95. There was like I don't remember. It was like a storage room, with nets up and stuff. I got the on board pianist to bring his keyboard down, and he played the tracks for me. And over the course of a few weeks, they sent me notes. I filmed it again, did the notes, and then they offered me the role, and I immediately left the ship, and I started that tour, which actually the whole of that tour, with traveling and doing that, sort of kicked off me ending up, moving to LA. It just made me realize that my uh my my success is what I want to make it, and I didn't like living in New York. And I think doing that traveling made me realize, oh, you know what? I think it's time to just do my own thing. And it's a real underground show. So it was another thing I realized about myself. I was like, maybe I'm not a mainstream guy. Maybe I'm like a a punk rock actor or something. And that's okay too, because it takes all kinds in this industry.
Absolutely. I love that story. And right, when the timing's right, you just got to make the decision and go, right?
Yeah, and it was an incredibly fulfilling role. It was just everything I love. And again, it's not the biggest credit in the world, but it was an incredibly important moment, an exciting moment for me.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, we are amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
Yeah, of course. Well, the most recent thing I did just finish up a few of the last little pickups from, like I said, Tower of God, which is an anime I voice a character on. It premiered on Crunchyroll a few weeks ago. They're releasing the English dub, like one episode at a time. I think 4 is out now. So that's sort of the tail end of the VO stuff. And then I've actually been working with a really great company in LA. They're called After Hours Theater. Um, that started as more or less a black box style theater company, and has turned into this specific, really immersive theater company where they do really cool things before COVID. Like a couple years ago, they did a version of One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest, where they converted a warehouse in Burbank into a 1960s asylum, and the guests came in as patients and retreated like that. And it's like half escape room, half immersive theater.
Oh, wild.
Yeah, and so what they've been doing, and then they've actually been a little bit moving towards online stuff actually before any of the pandemic stuff. So last year they launched a thing called Pixel Playhouse on Twitch, which I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a streaming gamer website. I don't even totally understand it. People
Yeah,
stream, you
I
know it,
tune into
yeah.
Twitch every once in a while. I'll admit that.
But you know, yeah. And so they were looking to get Twitch is owned by Amazon, and they were looking to get more entertainment and musical theater actually on because they're looking to expand the brand just from gaming. And I think some people are already doing that with like piano or like taking requests playing songs, and they developed something called the Pixel Playhouse, and they do essentially just like weekly cabarets, with various artists. And then that now has started morphing into doing these immersive online Twitch streams. So they started with importance of being earnest is sort of just like the putting the foot in the water. And the thing I'm working on now is this. I don't know what the title is actually yet, but it's essentially a show about this group of people getting on Zoom to have a reunion, a high school reunion for their show. They did Clue the musical in high school, and then they're all getting together. And then during the course of the show, they get sucked in to the game. And so they're actually pushing. They're using some of these like Tony Award winning music, not music, audio engineers, and these really incredibly talented engineers and lighting designers, and they're adapting their skills to moving forward this technology of streaming and making it profitable, and how they can sort of make it an immersive experience. So, you're the audience is interacting directly with the show as well. So that's what we're working on today. Actually, we have a reading for that today for the first time. There's some really, I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches of the people we can get to do it right now.
Right.
So I'm working on that, and honestly, I see that being a more uh, important art form. And I tell you why. It's not just out of convenience and cost. It's a cost effective for sure, but the thing I like about it most, and before any of this even happened either, is that I couldn't afford. I grew up in motels and stuff. I could not afford to go see a Broadway show as a kid. But certainly, my parents, maybe they could afforded a $15 stream of a really high quality production. That's what I love about this sort of move to streaming, is that it makes the art form more available to the rest of the country and to
For
people
sure.
in a lower economic place. And it's unfortunate, and I don't want to rag on it too much. It's unfortunate that the art form of theater, coming from mostly, bohemians and then the poor, that are the actors working on it, are playing purely just to the ultra wealthy. As much as I love Hamilton, I mean, $200 a ticket. I mean, the
I
odd,
have a story where I have a friend of mine who had friends that paid $4,500 per ticket.
that's crazy.
That's crazy. That's bonkers.
And I'm glad that I'm glad Lin Manuel's making money. He should be, but who is that for? I think is what it really makes me think. And a lot of the artwork that's really good, the people that need to see it can't. And we're going through these complex social issues and some of these amazing plays, but the people that can relate to it most can't see it.
For
I
sure. And I love that also with the streaming side of things that you still get live theater. It's happening right now. It's not pre-recorded, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's what's really cool about it, and it's happening in the moment. It is very different than, say, just watching something. It's even different than watching those live performances of, like, Hairspray that, like, NBC did, or those kinds of things, because with, like, a Twitch stream or, like, watching it from your computer or your phone, yes, the screen's small, but it's the closest thing you can come to having that relationship between an audience and an actor on stage that TV and film just can't get to. But again, nothing is going to replace being in a room with somebody. It's just not. But I think this has come the closest to emulating that.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that you brought up the fact that, a lot of this art has been created and is being performed by one usually it's typically class of people, and then it's being performed for the wealthier people that can afford, these crazy ticket prices. Uh, I think it would be nice to see in America to see more affordability in the theater because when I was first went to university, I studied abroad in Vienna, Austria, and we used to go to the State Opera House to go watch an opera. And sure, bring a book, dress nice, and you got
Hmm.
to line up for a couple hours. But I saw Juan Diego Flores, one of the best
Wow.
tenors in the world, €2.
Wow.
€2. They have a whole section in these theaters that is standing room only. Is it a bit uncomfortable to watch a 3.5 hour opera? Sure, but I'm getting to watch the best in the world for nothing. And I would love to see in this country more of a push to have this standing room kind of area that is properly really inexpensive.
I agree.
Even though $20 can be quite cheap when you compare it to a $200 or $300 ticket, but even less than that. And of course, it's first come, first serve, but having that available for the people, I think, is so important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What did I see? I think I standing roomed. It's the only quite a few shows in New York, but yeah, it's not used as that. It's not used in the same way. It's just really like the overflow tickets and the last minute buyers that they're not by any means affordable costs. But yeah, Vienna is known for that. In fact, I know quite a few. I'm sure you do as well, because we both went to school with a lot of opera singers. That I know quite a few that ended up moving out there because
Yeah,
not to get into this, but the what you call it, the city and the country also believes in and supports their artists financially, and so it is encouraged. The arts are encouraged, which unfortunately it's like we make art in spite of here, which is sometimes how it can feel.
sure. Yeah. Well, let's move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round.
Ooh.
I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, give it to me.
First question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Addiction and fear. Sorry, that's two.
That's totally fine. Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Easy. Nobody cares what you're up to, so stop caring.
So true. Third question. What is something that is working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Meditation, trusting my gut.
I love meditation. I'm right there with you. Fourth question. What is the best resource, whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, a podcast, maybe it's a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now?
Actually, I'd say the Pete Holmes podcast is pretty fire, and it's much more of a spiritual mixed with an entertainment podcast, but I just love his style. Big fan.
Fantastic. And the fifth question. If you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
This is going to be controversial. Yes, I would not have paid to go to college. I would have moved directly to New York, paid for classes out of pocket, and made the mistake much earlier, or not made the decision much earlier, I should say, to end up back in LA, if I'm being completely honest. Those loans, as
Absolutely.
you know, actually pretty much dictate a lot of your life, that probably 20 years after you're done.
Absolutely. And the last question. What is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in the industry that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I would say, honestly, I'll just double down on this. Stop caring about what you think other people want you to do, because nobody does. Everyone's thinking about themselves. So stick to your gut. Do what you want to do, because it's only then that you end up flourishing. And I guarantee you'll hear that exact same sentiment in everyone you ever admire or love as a performer. Um, there's always a point in that story where they're just like, you know what? F it. I'm doing my thing.
Absolutely. And it is time to wrap up this interview, which means it's also time for you to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at Giant Trent. It's two T's. I am a giant. That's really the only social media I do right now. As I mentioned before, there's the Twitch stream. If you just follow Pixel Playhouse on Instagram or on Twitch, you can get information about the show coming up. And then you should definitely watch Tower of God on Crunchyroll, where I play Lee Row. And that's it. And also just, be a good person. I'm going to plug that.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of good people out there, but we can always have some more. Beautiful. Trent, it has
Absolutely.
been fantastic catching up with you, having you on today. Thank you so much.
Dane, fantastic. Thank you so much for calling me. It was such a pleasure, man.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.